Hello, and thank you for listening. My name is Luke Mardigian, and you are listening to Be Insured, where we talk about business, leadership, and insurance. That way, on your worst day, when you need it the most, you will be insured. If you're watching this podcast on video, or if you're even listening on audio, you might have noticed that our logo and graphics look completely different from previous episodes. And that's because we did a complete rebranding. And it looks so much more in line with who we are and what we do. And if you're listening as a business owner, your visual brand is such an important tool when it comes to attracting customers and attracting the customers you want. During today's episode, I want to share more about why I wanted to refresh our branding for Be Insured and what motivated the look we eventually adopted and how it's going to help position us to grow in the future. And I'm especially excited to be joined by the branding expert who worked alongside me to bring this vision to life, Marika. Marika, thank you so much for being on today's show.
Oh, thanks for having me, you guys. I'm so excited to chat.
And I'm also excited because I have an awesome co-host.
Eric Gestring, the Mardigian Agency.
Marika, before we dive into the topic today, can you tell our listeners more about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, of course. So I am a branding expert, as you already mentioned. So I work with businesses, small, big, kind of anybody just starting out or rebranding, and take them through the process of kind of getting down to more of the roots of their business and creating a visual identity that matches their brand story and how they communicate themselves with their target audience.
You know, that is, and we'll talk a lot about it. This is going to be an open loop for this show. Yeah. Congruency, and I should say incongruency with brand messaging is the number one mistake I see with small businesses and when it comes to marketing. And so we're going to talk about how we fix that, the podcast, and how our listeners can fix that today.
So Luke, what motivated your decision to revamp the podcast brand, and how did Marika help you accomplish these goals?
You know, that's a great question, Eric. So when we started this, they're really for the network that we're on, Spotlight Radio, there's really not a branding per show. That wasn't really a thing. And I decided that we should really separate ourselves with a brand identity. And I had a local graphic designer throw it together, and we just got it. We got what we needed quickly. Just something that would say our show is called Be Insured, and the host is Luke Mardigian. Well, what I found was there's just nothing congruent about our previous branding with who we actually are. So that incongruency that I talked about, it didn't say that we were a podcast or a radio show, right? We're a syndicated radio show where we play on several radio stations here in Michigan, and we also are released on all major podcasts. But the logo didn't say that. The logo didn't have a professional feel to it as far as the scale of guests like Marika that we have. It didn't match the level of quality of guests that we had. So all those incongruencies led me to take a look at this. And I specifically chose Marika to help us because, and Marika, correct me if I'm wrong, but you got started helping a lot of people in the aesthetic industry, med spas and salons and that sort of thing, correct?
Yeah, I work with a lot of people in aesthetics as well as like kind of beauty industry. But I've branched out over the years, just working with people who I feel like I align with. And that are willing to do the work that I think is so important when it comes to branding. But yeah, that's kind of where I started. And I still work with a lot of people in that industry, but yeah.
And well, that's why I chose you because, first of all, insurance is just not a sexy industry. First of all, it's not like we could come up with they're so limited in what you can talk about and what it can look like.
It's not as beautiful as the results of Botox, that's for sure.
Exactly. Yeah. There's no lip filler version of insurance. True. Like there's just nothing that's that attractive. That's my wife and I own a med spa, which is how I know you, Marika. And she'll post before and afters of these women's lips. It just goes from regular to just voluptuous and beautiful. And we just don't have that. Like there's just no equivalent of that. So I chose to work with Marika because with her background, it is about aesthetics and insurance. And insurance and aesthetics are not words that you typically put together. And so to take somebody who's an expert in aesthetic branding and apply it to this very white collar industry, I thought was an interesting mix. The other reason why is because you being a Navy man and me being a former police officer, we have fairly authoritative personalities. And I want something a little bit
good at protecting people.
Yeah. We'll get into the breakdown of logo. That was Marika's idea. But we have fairly authoritative personalities, and I wanted something a little bit softer. You know, our old logo had like a metallic shine to it, right? That's not very inviting. It's not like, hey, I want to do business with the company that's a big piece of metal. Said no one ever, right? So those are the main reasons why I had Marika come on board and help us with that. So Marika, can you talk a little bit more about some of the creative decisions that you made when you were designing our new brand?
Yeah, of course. So as Luke knows, I send a pretty long questionnaire to all my clients. And it goes into a lot of questions that a lot of people initially might think, like, what the heck does this have to do with you designing a logo or whatever visual kind of components of a brand? But to me, that's what really, like your vision, your core values, things like that is what really creates creative decisions. So when we were looking at the branding for you guys, I took notes on things that you had mentioned, like wanting to be professional and polished, but also, a lot of the core values that you listed had to do with like relationships and positivity and kind of creating this community. So color-wise, we went with more of like a blue scale and grays. And to me, blue, you guys know, like colors have psychology behind them. Yep. So blue kind of represents this trust and loyalty and confidence, but also a sense of security. So it felt really right for this project.
Oh, perfect.
And then with the fonts, something we went with something that felt strong, but also modern. And then if you guys see the icon, that was the fun part because we kind of pieced together something that was made up of different core values that Luke had mapped out. So the shield represents kind of the insured and protected feel, and then the star represents achievement, and then the microphone, of course, to me represents the platform that you guys use for this show and building relationships and positivity and kind of this community.
Yeah, and I loved the final logo. Blew me away, honestly. I couldn't be happier. This is going to serve us well for a long time.
Awesome. Yeah, that's the point. That's kind of always my goal, is to give you, all these different variations that can be used across so many different platforms in so many different ways, and that each piece still feels like your brand. So when you just use the icon, it still feels, branded perfectly. Like people will start identifying that with you.
So Marika, this is Eric. And I want to ask, why is having cohesive, well-designed brand or branding so important?
Yeah. So, I think just kind of to carry over what I was just talking about, people start identifying those visual components with who you are. And if those tell a different story across different platforms, like your social media has kind of this hodgepodge branding, and then your logo's one thing, and then you're using different colors, and your messaging is kind of shoddy across whoever's doing whatever, like managing whatever platforms and communications, then people aren't going to get to know you or your brand for what it is. And so you're not going to establish this kind of authority of who you are, and your target audience is going to be confused on, what they're going to get with you. So doing that foundational work of, who you are and what values you hold, and like what your vision is for your business, and really what makes you tick as a business is so important before making those creative decisions on, creating a cohesive brand that you're going to put out there. Because if you do that work and then you create this brand around that, then it's going to be really easy for you to remain consistent with it. And your people, the people that are, watching you or getting to know your brand or see all of your stuff, they're going to identify with that, and they're going to connect, and they're going to see this like over and over, that repetition of, consistency. And I think that's what helps people like develop a relationship with their clients.
Yeah, I love it. That's that congruency of messaging to branding is just huge. That's what, like with the new branding for Be Insured, it's clear that we're a podcast or a radio show, right? Like you look at it and you go, even if you didn't know anything about us, you'd be like, well, like Luke Mardigian, somebody, so let me Google his name, and there's a microphone, so there's probably a podcast, and it's probably about insurance, like, and that's about it. Like, and so that's either going to attract you or it's not. Like, and that's okay.
And do you think a lot of it is subconscious for people, even?
Oh yeah,
as far as like,
it's been proven. That
that's what I thought.
Like the colors for Tide, like laundry
they
detergent.
study it.
Yeah, that's like now like an orange bottle is known as like clean.
Yeah.
It's like all subconscious.
It's remarkable.
So you go in and you get, like, if you're a Tide person, you just look for the Tide bot. Like you don't even know about other brands. Yeah. It's not even a thing. Hey, Marika, for my own curiosity, could you tell me with your questionnaire that you've talked about a few times and you referred it to putting the work in ahead of time, how many business owners just have absolutely no ability to answer any of those questions?
Oh my gosh, you would be shocked. I
assumed it was more than not.
Yeah. And, like for people who haven't done that, I mean, when I first started working in my business, I kind of just, when you first start, you just kind of work with people, even if they don't have it figured out.
Right. Yeah.
And now I'm in a place where I don't work with people unless they're willing to like go through that. And because I don't feel I don't feel right giving somebody something that I don't feel 100% sure that it actually is something that's going to be strong enough to stay as their brand and that they're going to be able to use it the way that they need to. So, well,
I imagine that the same clients who are able to fill out that questionnaire are also the ones who pay you on time, give you revisions in a timely fashion. I mean, as a solopreneur, so to speak, a freelancer, I mean, those things, the cash flow is like really important. So if you have your stuff together in the business, you probably have it together on the financial side, and they're going to give you more positive feedback and be able to actually be a part of the process, as opposed to just, they could go on Fiverr.com and pay $5 for the crappy logos on there.
Exactly. And that's what it is. It really is a collaborative process. Like I'm going to obviously use my expertise and put together kind of a concept for my clients, but like I need them to do the work as well. So people have to be willing to take that little dive into kind of like that foundational stuff of their business that they maybe haven't like ever thought about or haven't thought about for a very long time.
Which I feel bad for the business owners who the first time they think about it is when they ask for a logo. That's a bad time to ask for that.
So Marika, what are some tips that you have for businesses who are going through rebranding process, and what can they do to make that experience more successful for them?
Yeah, I mean, I think not to like keep beating it in, but I think just getting those questions, like what is your mission? Like what's your vision? What are your core values? And then I think what, at least when I work with people, what sets me apart, which is kind of like what Luke was saying earlier, that I work with a lot of aesthetic businesses, but, I work with you guys. I have clients in like the mortgage industry and kind of like real estate, random, other industries as well. But I think what kind of sets me apart is that I have a pretty unique perspective when it comes to branding, where I don't really follow industry standards, where I'm not like looking at the same type of businesses for inspiration. I think it's more important to know who you are and what like makes your business unique. And that is what that's what you should follow when you're creating your branding.
So the tip is you have to work with Marika if you want to.
Yeah. No. Oh God. I need to hire more people.
I have a great example of this. Could you put Camelot's logo up? I had a client who recently did a rebranding. I'm gonna show it to our viewers because we do video this.
Oh, cool.
If they can bring it up, maybe, perhaps.
I'm just the only one that doesn't get to see what you're talking about.
I know.
You will later.
Yeah, we'll send it to you later.
Yeah.
So there's a company that I work with that's a water restoration company, and their stuff said Camelot Water Restoration, and they rebranded it to Camelot Water Emergency Water Removal, I think is what it is. And it's just like their logo and their branding is what they do. And it's just so powerful when it's your logo and branding are congruent with what you do. So, Marika, how can people connect with you?
So I pretty much live on Instagram. That's like the only social platform that I really use. So
Perfect.
My Instagram is at The Aesthetic Creative. So people can connect with me there. Links to my website and everything are there as well.
Yep, and some of your work too. So thank you everyone for listening, and be sure to connect with us at the Mardigian Agency on Facebook and Instagram, and we'll see you next time on Be Insured.